This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Boko Haram leader reportedly killed in May as Nigeria's military investigates those claims. Uganda reimposes a strict lockdown as cases of COVID-19 keep rising. And Egypt expected to produce the first batch of China's Sinovac vaccine by the end of June. Hello and welcome. You're watching Africa Live. We're coming to live from Nairobi. I'm Hannah Viviers. Here are more stories making headlines this hour. In business news, leaders from G7 nations strike deal to tax big companies. And in sporting action, we speak to two printers who will be representing Cameroon at the Tokyo Summer Games. Well, let's begin in Nigeria, where rival militant group ISWAP has announced the death of Boko Haram's leader, Abubakar Shekau. The announcement was made in an audio recording. The Nigerian military says it is investigating the reports of Shekau's death. What is known thus far, though, is that Shekau led Boko Haram for over a decade. ISWAP's leader is reported to have said that Shekau detonated an explosive, killing himself during a battle between the rival groups. The incident is alleged to have taken place last month, but as we mentioned, these reports are still being investigated. Well, for more on this story, we're joined by Deji Badmus, who's live for us in Lagos. Thank you for joining us, Deji. Deji, what more do we know about reports of the death of Boko Haram's leader?
Well, Hannah, that recording you talked about actually came from the leader of ISWAP. That's Abu Musab al-Banawi, who is the leader of ISWAP. That's the breakaway faction of Boko Haram now. From the recording, it would appear we now have a clearer picture of what actually happened. According to the leader of ISWAP, the Boko Haram leader, Shekau, was not actually caught on the very day they launched the attack. According to him, he escaped, and after about 5 days, he was found, and then he ran away again. Eventually, they caught up with him, and they were actually talking to him to surrender and recognize the leadership of ISWAP when he decided to blow himself up. And of course, the ISWAP leader accused the late Boko, well, I don't know if it's appropriate to use the word late now, but accused Abubakar Shekau of using excessive force and targeting Muslims who, according to them, are believers. So for now, the Nigerian military has not confirmed it. It's understandable. The reason why the Nigerian military and the government are being cautious is because, the Nigerian military in the past claimed on several occasions that he killed Abubakar Shekau only for him to resurface. So I think the government and the military are actually exercising caution, taking their time to confirm absolutely that this individual is dead. But from what we are gathering, especially since this is coming from ISWAP itself, it appears there is some semblance of credibility to the story that Abubakar Shekau may be dead. The next question is, what happens next? Well, it's from the account of the ISWAP leader, Boko Haram is not dead yet. According to the ISWAP leader, there's another leader who is refusing to surrender, someone who is loyal to Abubakar Shekau. So according to him, fighting is still going on, and that they're trying to talk these other guys now, these other individuals who are loyal to Shekau to give up and identify with the ISWAP leadership. So it's still not the end of Boko Haram, so to speak, especially judging by the account of the ISWAP leader. Hannah?
Thank you so much for that, Deji Badmo, speaking to us from Lagos, Nigeria. Well, the Boko Haram insurgency has affected northern Nigeria for over a decade. CGTN's Wilkinson Yawa gives us further insight into the group's leader.
Rumors of Abubakar Shekau's death swirled around for weeks before the militant group Islamic State West African Province came out to issue a statement. In an audio recording, a man believed to be ISWAP leader Abu Musab al-Barnawi said his fighters had sought the warlord on orders of Islamic State leadership, chasing him and offering him the chance to repent and join them. Al-Barnawi said, and I quote, "Shekau preferred to be humiliated in the afterlife than getting humiliated on earth, and he killed himself instantly by detonating an explosive," end of quote. Abubakar Shekau took over the reins of the Boko Haram militant group in 2010 after the original leader Mohammed Yusuf died in police custody. Shekau led the transformation of Boko Haram from an underground Islamic sect in 2009 to a fully fledged insurgency, killing, kidnapping, staging prison breaks and bombings, and looting its way across northeast Nigeria. Boko Haram means Western education is forbidden in the Hausa language spoken across Nigeria's north. Its main objective was to create an Islamic state under Sharia law. The group has killed more than 30,000 people, forced around 2 million people to flee their homes, and spawned a massive humanitarian crisis. Shekau's suicide bombers attacked not only churches and markets, but mosques too. His fighters abducted thousands of women for forced marriage and children for use as child soldiers. In 2014, Shekau's fighters kidnapped more than 270 schoolgirls from the town of Chibok, kicking off a global social media campaign dubbed Bring Back Our Girls and fronted by the likes of former U.S. First Lady Michelle Obama. Around 100 of the Chibok girls are still missing, and some are thought to have died in captivity. In recent years, the United States placed a $7 million bounty on Shekau's head. Wilkis Anyabwa, CGTN.
Well, for further analysis on this report, we are joined by David Otto Andele, an international defense and security specialist. He's also the director of the security outfit, SISO, or Step In, Step Out. Thank you so much for joining us there, David. Just under Boko Haram, under Abubakar Shekau, Boko Haram had consolidated its presence in the region. What impact could the report of his death likely have on the militant group?
Thank you very much. I think the impact is threefold. It's not just on the faction. The Jama'atu al-Sunnah leader Wati wal Jihad, popularly known as Jazz, which was the faction that Abubakar Shekau had been in charge since 2009, making it about 11 years. The immediate impact is that the Jazz faction, which was very competitive with the Islamic State of West Africa Province, as it calls itself, is no longer a viable faction. So that group, is dwindling into very much insignificance. More importantly, for the Nigerian government, Jazz has lost its leader, who was very erratic. I mean, he killed most of his lieutenants. He was responsible for the kidnap of the Chibok girls. So he's no longer there. But more so, he has lost most of his fighters, who have now, pledged allegiance and are now aligning themselves with the Islamic State of West Africa Province, except for one very strong faction. They call them the Bakura faction, which is led by one Malam. They're from the Buduma tribe in the Lake Chad Basin. They are holding ground against the Islamic State. But what is the impact for the Islamic State is that it allows them to consolidate the territory, which was, formerly used by Boko Haram, especially in the Sambisa forest, and also for them to continuously preach their propaganda, that, they are now in charge of the entire West African province. Now, what is the impact to the Nigerian army is that it then allows them to consolidate their attention and launch an attack just on one faction, which is now the Islamic State of West Africa Province.
David, from what we know from various reports and ongoing reports on Boko Haram's activities, we know that it's managed to launch sustained attacks despite international efforts to defeat the group. How can security organs take advantage of this latest development in the fight against the group?
I think in terms of how Boko Haram has been pursued by the international community. I think they haven't done the same intervention which we saw the international community do when it came to fighting against the Islamic State itself, in Iraq and Syria before they were, defeated militarily. I think, we have to see the same. What has been happening in the case of Boko Haram, it's been some kind of a Nigerian effort. Of course, you have regional multinational joint task force, from Cameroon, Niger Republic, and Chad. But most of the fighting against Boko Haram has been done by the Nigerian army. And I think what we need to see is some genuine effort by the international community to come to Nigerian and the regional countries' aid, and actually kind of replicate the same tactics and strategy which they used when they defeated the Islamic State core in Iraq and Syria. So that is what I think should be done, rather than, a situation where Nigeria and the regional states will be left alone to fight against Boko Haram. But the good news for Nigeria is that they no longer have to, really focus their attention on the Jazz faction of Abubakar Shekau. Now they would have to focus more on the faction of the Islamic State of West Africa Province.
Mr. Otto, thank you so much for all that. David Otto Ndele, the Director on Security for the Horn of Africa Institute for Peace and Security. Let's turn our attention to Sudan now, where 36 people have been killed and at least 32 others wounded in clashes in South Darfur. According to state news agency SUNA, violence erupted between members of the Felata and Taisha groups in the area of Tafuk. Despite a peace deal signed between Sudan's transitional authorities and some rebel groups late last year, security has worsened in Darfur recently. Ahead of its withdrawal, the joint UN-African Union peacekeeping force stopped patrolling the region in January. This prompted Sudanese national forces to pledge to secure Darfur. Well, over in Uganda, the president, Yoweri Museveni, has reimposed a strict lockdown to help battle a surge in COVID-19 cases reported in that country. The president also ordered the closure of schools, the suspension of inter-district travel, the shutdown of weekly open markets, and the suspension of church services. Most of the new restrictions are to be implemented for 42 days. According to the African Centers for Disease Control, Uganda has reported over 52,000 infections. Let's discuss this further with CGTN's Leon Senyanga, who is in Kampala for us. Thank you so much for joining us, Leon. Tell us, Leon, about the new measures and why they are deemed necessary at this time.
Well, key there, of course, is the fact that the first point of discussion yesterday from President Yoweri Museveni's address was the closure of schools and institutions of higher learning. What we have been able to gather is that there have been several clusters of cases reported from schools since March 2001. The numbers actually indicate that 948 cases have been reported from 43 schools in 22 districts. That is, of course, a major cause of worry, given the fact that now students had started to return to the schools, and with the congregation of students, approximately 1,000 of them in almost every school, puts them very much at risk. So, yes, one of the most important measures there was the closure of the institutions. The other, of course, was the suspension of communal prayers. The churches and mosques have been a hotspot for cases. Those have also been suspended. The weekly open markets have also been suspended, but also travel of passengers from the category 1 country like India, because of their high transmission, has also been stopped, only with the exception of Ugandans returning home. Then also inter-district travels have been stopped. This, of course, may prove a challenge here, but it comes in as also an important measure in ensuring that the spread is actually curbed. So, yes, it's a very difficult situation now for the next 42 days, and the government says that it will have to assess all these kind of measures and either ease or actually extend them given what kind of assessments that will come through at the end of it all.
Leon, Uganda has been facing various challenges in its vaccine rollout. What's the latest in terms of vaccination, and how are those challenges being addressed?
Well, some of the major challenges there was vaccine hesitancy and of course, the distribution of these particular vaccines. Misinformation was also another issue in the rolling out of the vaccines. But quite a lot has changed over the past few weeks. Just to let you know that Uganda received 964,000 AstraZeneca doses, and these, as it stands, over 700,000 people have been able to receive at least their first dose. 35,000 have taken the second dose. So yes, there's a positive response towards this. The Ministry of Health recently rolled out a 10-day campaign. So there's been a positive response, with approximately 80,000 receiving the vaccine over the last 7 days. President Yoweri Museveni said that Uganda will be receiving more vaccines, 175,000 from the COVAX facility and 300,000 from the Chinese government. So these, I believe, will help in trying to roll out the possibility that Uganda can vaccinate 21 million people at least over the next year.
Thank you so much for all that, Leon Senyango, speaking to us from Kampala. Well, after the World Health Organization approved the use of the CoronaVac COVID-19 vaccine developed by China's Sinovac for emergency use, Egypt welcomed the decision. Cairo has invested in facilities to manufacture the doses locally. The first batch of 2 million doses is expected to be produced by the end of June. Here is Adel Amrouchi with the details.
Egypt has welcomed the World Health Organization's approval of Sinovac's CoronaVac for emergency use. Cairo had earlier signed an agreement with the vaccine producer to manufacture its jabs domestically.
The Chinese technology is highly advanced, and I know well that the advancement in the manufacturing of pharmaceutical products as a whole, and particularly the vaccines, after the pandemic of COVID-19, the target from this partnership is to use Egypt as a hub to send or to export these medicines and these vaccines to the Arab countries nearby Egypt, and also the African continent, because you know well that the China products or Chinese products, particularly in medicine and the vaccines, have a very good reputation in the African continent.
The CEO of the government's vaccine manufacturing arm, Vexera, says the production line for CoronaVac will begin churning out the jabs in mid-June. Since May 21, Chinese experts have been working on transferring the Chinese technology to Egypt and setting up the quality control system to oversee the production of the jab. Experts say the step means that such a partnership will put Egypt in a place to assist in further developing the vaccine.
Any vaccine have been produced in the past period will undergo a lot of modifications to face the viral infection more accurately. I'm sure that the clinical trials will go on after the results of these vaccines have been published in the past period. This will be modified to have a more and more effective results, to reach near the 100.
They must get the Egyptian drug authorities' approval, a process that could take up to 16 weeks. Meanwhile, Vexera will continue producing and storing the CoronaVac jab. Sinovac will routinely export the raw biomaterial needed for the vaccine until Egypt is ready to produce it locally. The CoronaVac vaccines made in Egypt will be rolled out in 2 jabs administered 3 weeks apart. Egypt has not yet announced a price tag for the much-needed COVID-19 vaccine. Expectations are it will be offered at an internationally competitive price, while domestically it will be distributed by the government and offered for free. Adel Mahroui, CGTN, Cairo.
Let's now take a short break. When we return, here's what you can expect. We'll look at efforts to conserve marine environments in Nigeria and Zanzibar.
Nigeria is my home. 160 million vibrant, ambitious individuals constantly seeking the perfect self-expression. It is these people who inspired me to be that person that is seen, to be a voice that is heard, and ultimately to be the anchor that I am. I have to tap in, tune in, and turn on the very best qualities within me to deliver the news. I'm Richard Nta, an anchor for CGTN.
Welcome back. You're watching Africa Live. Well, Nigerian researchers are developing a data-driven solution for West African coasts that are facing environmental degradation. Their solution could provide early warning signals for coastal communities battling the effects of climate change. CGTN's Kelechi Emekalam has more on that report.
Flash floods sweeping through communities along the coastal region, eroding houses and farmlands. One of the many results of decades of coastal degradation. For the West African region, the high economic potential in coastal areas is being eroded too.
According to an analysis by the World Bank, the degradation of the coast of Benin, Cote d'Ivoire, Senegal, and Togo cost about $3.8 billion in 2017 alone. That is about 5.5% of the total GDP of these countries. So you can see the enormous impact of coastal degradation.
The threats along West Africa's coastal areas spurred a group of researchers to seek possible interventions and solutions to the problems. The Enhancing Adaptation and Resilience Against Multi-Hazard Along West Africa's Coasts, or EAWAC project, first carried out an assessment on the needs and impact of climate change on the coastal areas.
The second phase of our intervention has to do with the developing dashboard, which will be some sort of one-stop shop for evidence-based information and also analysis of situations about the impact of climate change and other stressors on the West African coast.
The intervention would provide early warnings to help communities along the West African coastlines prepare better, coordinate responses, and manage risks more effectively.
We have a whole range of tools, of initiatives, or solutions that we can bring about, ranging from fiscal solutions, policy solutions, and most importantly, nature-based solutions. We will also need to strengthen our capacity to observe different hazards, including flooding.
Oil spills, plastic pollution, industrialization, and population explosion are among the many issues that continue to threaten the West African waterways. The cumulative effect on the coastal ecosystem and the livelihood of the people has been dire. Researchers are calling for more government support to implement transformative policies towards salvaging the environment. Kelechi Emekalam, CGTN Abuja, Nigeria.
Well, the east coast of Africa is rich in coral reefs and marine life, making Zanzibar Island in Tanzania an aquatic paradise of sorts. In recent years, however, corals have been threatened by climate change, with many beginning to bleach and die. The disappearance of coral reefs also affects fishermen. To protect the ocean, a group of locals have switched from fishing to coral farming, planting corals and giving back to nature. Let's take a look.
Naitwa Abdi Mjaka Haji, nimezaliwa Makunduchi na naishi Jambiani. Nipo Jambiani takribani miaka 26 mpaka sasa hivi. Na naipenda bahari kwa sababu toka utotoni kwangu kama nilivyokuwa nachukuliwa na babangu kwenda baharini, kwenda kuona mambo mengi ndani ya bahari. Nikaamua kujishughulisha na harakati zangu za maisha kama vile kuvua kwanza, na nilikuwa nachukuliwa na babangu kwenda kuvua. Nilisikia tu kuwa kuna mzungu anaanzisha mradi fulani wa kuweka kama hifadhi za samaki baharini. Baadaye nikaamua tu kujiunga na mradi wa marine culture ili kujua baadhi ya mambo kwenye bahari.
Marine culture has been founded in 2008 as an NGO in Switzerland and as a branch here in Zanzibar, Tanzania. And since this, we have several projects in aquaculture development and conservation. We try to give an opportunity to people to learn the coral farming and the coral restoration.
Kabla ya kuja hapa nilikuwa sijui nini coral. Lakini nilipoanza tu kuenda baharini nikajua coral ni nini. Nilipokuwa mara yangu ya kwanza kudive, baada ya kuona zile coral kufa, nilijisikia vibaya sana.
We started to do coral gardening or growing corals to create jobs for the fishermen. The idea was to sell the products to the aquarium market. But then the climate catastrophe came. It was an El Niño year in 2016 that all our corals died.
Matumbawe hutengenezwa na wanyama wadogo wadogo ambao wanaitwa polyps. Ambao hawaonekani kwa macho mpaka kwa vifaa maalum vya kisayansi. Coral ni kiumbe hai kama vilivyo viumbe hai vingine, kwa maana coral inakula, inaishi na pia zinazaa. Au kipindi cha jua kali, maji yanapokuwa moto na coral pia inachuja rangi na baadaye kufa kabisa. Matumbawe hayo hutengenezwa kitu ambacho kinaitwa mwamba wa matumbawe. ambao mwamba huo huvutia wanyama wadogo wadogo na kufanya kama ni makazi yao. Na baadaye wavuvi huwa wanakuja kwenye mwamba huo na kujipatia riski zao za kuvua samaki kwenye mwamba huo wa matumbawe. Kwa sasa tupo katika soko la samaki ambalo ni la Malindi, na tunajionea jinsi gani samaki wanavyopatikana kwa wingi, lakini isitoshe tupo katika samaki wanaopatikana kwa wingi au wanaocheza katika maeneo ya coral ni changu peke yake ambayo ndio anayopatikana kwa wingi, na wanakuwa ni vivutio kwa samaki wakubwa kama tuna au red snapper na wengineo. Lakini vile vile kwa sasa hivi samaki hawapatikani kwa kiasi kikubwa kwa sababu hali ya matumbawe imetoweka au imepotea kabisa. Na tuliamua kuotesha miche ya coral na kurejesha katika hali zao za kawaida. Tunakuwa tunaenda baharini kwa kulinda haya matumbawe. Tunakuwa tunapanda coral. Tunaziweka kwenye diski na baadaye wiki moja au wiki mbili zinakuwa tayari zishakamata ile diski na zinakuwa tayari zishakuwa kidogo. Takriban mwezi mmoja au miezi miwili tayari zishakuwa za kwenda kutransplanti. Baadhi ya siku zinakuwa zipo chafu, kama zinaingia kama majani fulani hivi, tunachukua miswaki na tunasafisha kwa ajili ya kuwa nzuri zaidi.
This is an ongoing program, so we plant nearly 10,000 new corals every year. And especially we are looking for a high amount of biodiversity, adapt from the nature.
mpaka sasa hivi nipo hapa marine culture kwa ajili ya kuilinda bahari, na nahakikisha nitailinda bahari mpaka watoto wangu au wajukuu zangu au hata ndugu majirani nao pia wajione kilichomo ndani ya bahari kama vile coral na samaki.
To Egypt now. Chinese President Xi Jinping visited the country in 2016. One of the Egyptian politicians who met the Chinese president was Alaa Abed, the head of the majority party in Egypt's parliament and vice president of the Arab Parliament Assembly. CGTN's Yasser Kim spoke to Alaa Abed about that visit.
How did you come to meet President Xi Jinping, and what was your first impression when you met the president?
I had the honor to welcome the President of China, and since the first moment I met him, I felt I'm in front of a real leader who values China's position in the world. He deserves to be the leader of a world power with the biggest influence on the economies worldwide.
Did you have any personal conversation with President Xi Jinping, and what was it about?
In the meeting at Parliament, a few subjects were raised. The first conversation was about Chinese relations with the regional countries and especially Egypt, the strategic and economic ties. Secondly, during talks I was involved in with the presence of His Excellency, it was clear he is a leader who seeks peace, seeks stability, and seeks for China to always be at the forefront of the economic scene. He wants real, strong relations that would build mutual benefits economically, socially, politically, and militarily.
How do you see President Xi Jinping's governance and leadership of China?
He has given a lot and will give more to the great Chinese people, and he can give even more to the nations around the world. Today, every house in the world has a Chinese-made component or appliance. Every house in the world is aware of China's size and power, whether militarily, politically, economically. It's clear to all that Mr. Xi loves his country, a leader who was able to completely transform China before and now.
Well, it's time now for us to take a short break and return. We'll be bringing you the business news.
Africa is the nexus of enterprise, and global business will tell you why it matters.
From the mega investment projects to multi-billion-dollar mergers and acquisitions.
Africa today collects, just in terms of revenues from taxes alone, $545 billion a year. If you take 10% of that and you devote it to the energy sector, problem solved.
All this on Global Business, weekdays at this time on CGTN.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Time now for the business news. Leaders from the group of 7 nations made up of some of the world's leading economies have reached a landmark deal to pursue higher global taxation on multinational businesses such as Google, Apple, and Amazon. It's a move that could raise hundreds of billions of dollars to help them cope with the economic aftermath of COVID-19. The G7 have agreed to back a minimum global corporate rate of at least 15%. Companies are to also pay more tax in the markets where they sell goods and services. The deal, which has been years in the making, also pledges to end national digital service taxes levied by the UK and other European countries. The United States had previously argued that these taxes unfairly targeted US tech giants. However, these new measures will first need to find a broader agreement at a meeting of the G20 due to take place in Venice next month. Well, Nigeria says it plans to grow its power generation to 11,000 megawatts by next year. This as it scales up measures to improve production. Nigeria's power generation currently hovers around 5,000 megawatts. Although the country has 13,000 megawatts of installed electricity production capacity, more than half of the power generated is lost due to dilapidated transmission infrastructure. The government says it is working with foreign investors to improve its energy infrastructure. Well, Tanzania's Energy Ministry has requested an 8% budget increase to finance development projects. It says some of the money will go into finalizing one of its biggest projects, the over 2,000 megawatts Julius Nyerere hydroelectric power project. The government says it plans to focus on ensuring it generates sufficient, reliable and cost-effective electricity. With the details of that project, here is CGTN's Daniel Kijo.
Tanzania's Ministry of Energy is looking for an 8% boost to its 2021-2022 budget. The government says it wants to use some of the funds to complete the biggest energy project the country has ever undertaken, the Julius Nyerere hydropower plant. The minister in charge says the project is more than half completed and when finished is expected to double electricity generation. The government aims to start filling the dam with water in November.
We will fill the dam till 25th of April next year. By then, our hydro plant will have enough water to start generating electricity. And like I said before, by 14th of June 2021, we will connect it to the national grid, which will switch on the transformers and citizens will start getting electricity.
The project is expected to play a major role in pushing the country's industrial drive. For instance, the hydropower plant is expected to supply 70 megawatts of electricity to power the first phase of a new railway.
As a country, because of the development goals, is in urgent need to have sufficient power to power its own industries and its infrastructure. As you know, Tanzania is now constructing a standard gauge railway, which is going to be powered with electricity. So the need to have sufficient funding to the Ministry of Energy cannot be overstated.
Data released by Tanzania's Energy Supply Authority shows that currently the country produces 1,604 megawatts. The Ministry of Energy says it is currently working on a number of power generation projects in an effort to meet the goal of producing 5,000 megawatts by the year 2025. With Tanzania looking to enter the Africa Free Trade Area, the ministry says it is imperative that the country boosts its industrial capacity so as to export a wide range of products into this 1.3 billion people market. To do this, the industries which will be located in Tanzania will need to be supplied with adequate power. Between April 2020 and April this year, more than 18,844 institutions were connected, making a total of 28,044 electrified institutions in the country. This coming budget is also expected to provide electricity to 1,956 villages that are yet to be supplied with electricity.
The prospect of Tanzania becoming an economic superpower giant in the context of East Africa community is real if these infrastructure projects will be implemented and the energy projects finalized.
Tanzania's economic development goals rely heavily on access to reliable energy. Daniel Kijo, CGTN, Dar es Salaam.
Nigeria's ban on travelers from India, Brazil, and Turkey is taking a toll on several businesses in that country. The government announced the restrictions last month following a surge in the spread of coronavirus in those countries. CGTN's Tse Makende reports.
Ezekiel Bok is a travel consultant for Nigerians seeking medical care in India. It's a popular destination for medical tourism among Nigerians, especially the wealthy. But since the government placed restrictions on travel, Ezekiel has been battling to stay in business.
The suspension of the flight has stopped people even making effort to travel. They won't even come for inquiry of anything, not to talk of traveling. So it has really affected us generally. Economically, there's no income for business people, and then even for the sick people, they cannot travel for their treatment. It affects their health. It may lead to death.
Ezekiel's experience is just one of many whose businesses are affected by the travel ban. The International Air Transport Association says travel restrictions put in place to counter COVID-19 have caused major economic losses.
Nigerians trade with almost every country in the world, and especially countries like China, India, Turkey. This ban, especially for India and Turkey particularly, it will have very grave effects on us as individuals.
The pandemic has put pressure on Nigeria's economy. The World Bank attributes 42% of overall job losses in Nigeria between 2020 and 2021 to the outbreak of the coronavirus disease in the country. The government says it has earmarked nearly $200 million to support businesses impacted by the coronavirus disease. The Trade and Investment Ministry says close to 1 million people are expected to benefit from the credit support. Economic analysts say that doesn't go far enough.
The government needs to give further incentive to local businesses that can replicate the kind of goods and services we get from outside the country, especially these countries where the ban has been placed, and try to encourage them. If we cannot give them additional resources.
Ezekiel hopes he will be able to obtain a grant from the government. He says that will help him remain in business. Until then, uncertainty hangs over him. Tessum Akendi, CGTN Jos, Nigeria.
Well, over in Ghana, pressure is mounting on the government to regulate cryptocurrency trading, which is currently deemed illegal by the central bank. The bank is warning people to stop trading in digital currencies altogether. But the trend continues. Reporting from the country's capital, Nabil Ahmed Rufai tells us more.
Nick Owusu has been trading in cryptocurrency for 6 years.
Your bank account, as it were, in Bitcoin.
He uses the digital currency for transactions such as money transfers and investments online.
This is a type of currency whose price at any point in time is determined by the forces of demand and supply. So if the demand for Bitcoin goes up, the value also goes up. If the demand for Bitcoin reduces, the value goes down.
There is a growing trend among Ghanaians trading in cryptocurrency due to the high return on investments. But the central bank says it is illegal because it is not regulated.
When you have a currency whose value is so unstable, really, you really cannot use it effectively to meet any of the standard functions of money. And this is why I think there is a lot more emphasis on looking at digital money, which is backed by the state, backed by the central banks.
Last year, cryptocurrency transfers to and from Africa reached more than $300 million, with Nigeria, South Africa, and Kenya doing most of the transactions. Owusu says Ghana can also take advantage as the popularity of cryptocurrency trade grows.
By looking at the series of this transaction, you are able to bring in a lot of people who are unbanked in the country. And once you can find a way to regulate these activities, it provides an avenue for revenue generation for the state.
Still, there are concerns about people using cryptocurrency for fraudulent activities such as money laundering. Ghana's central bank has warned people not to trade with cryptocurrencies for now. It says it is in the process of introducing a digital currency which will be safer to use for trading than Bitcoin. Analysts, however, do not want the central bank to rule out trading in cryptocurrency entirely, but rather find ways of regulating it.
The time has come for the regulator, which is the Bank of Ghana, to bring in experts. We can secure the services of experts from Europe, America, Israel to come in and then build the capacity, some people who are into financial technology, to take it up. So those people can engage as players and also engage as, help the regulator, also manage the activities of crypto in Ghana.
Nick Owusu agrees. He says trading in cryptocurrency will continue to happen despite the warnings against it. He strongly believes if it is regulated, Ghana's economy will benefit. Nabil Ahmed Rufai, CGTN, Accra, Ghana.
The sport is coming up after the break. Here's a highlight. We speak with two sprinters who will be representing Cameroon at the Tokyo Summer Games.
How would you create your legend? On the fields, on the tracks, in the arenas of Africa. Were you born to be a player? Could this moment be yours? Sports Scene. Find your game.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
And now for sport. This year, Cameroon is to be represented by 2 athletes in the sprint events at the upcoming Olympic Games. Both athletes have been focused on preparing for the competition. CGTN Susan Mungwele brings us details of the